everyone. My name is Flemming Chistensen. I'm representing consultancy engineering specialist CESI. We are more than 60 years old. We are of original Italian company that was born out of making the Italian power sector, building that after World War II in Europe. I have decided that the presentation I'll be giving today will not be about the integrals, the statistics, the intermittency details that we're experts in. Rather, that would be an opportunity for me to discuss further with the team working on this the coming days. Today, I've decided that it's better to talk about the renewable vision. We had a speaker previously telling about Australia having decided that they'll have a pure carbon-free power generation by 2050. I believe the same is possible in Oman. There are a number of things to take care of before we reach that, where we kind of can take that we have our transmission grid being the phalange of the renewable energy, in line with the previous experience from Oman for water. There is the smart grid. We're pretty experts in that. We can come into that during the coming days. And there was also mentioned that there is the new oil, that's data. So we should also prepare for that, and having the new oil is what will lubricate the transformation to this vision. So just as a start, before my balloon here will fly away, this is 1 ton of CO2. Now, I have this balloon with me here, which is about 13, 14 liters of content. Anyone would have any idea how much CO2 in grams this would be equivalent to on standard conditions for temperature and pressure, etc.? No one. So this is about 25 grams of CO2 when in gaseous form. And with Oman having very clean power generation for fossil fuel because it's all gas-fired, how much water would you be able to prepare for cook for a cup of tea and generate this amount of CO2? The answer is about half a liter. So half a liter of hot water for your tea will generate this amount of CO2. So this is Oman. This is good. Now we got some of the rest of the world using coal-fired generation. And since coal-fired is producing about double as much CO2 as gas, that would be double. So you could have half the tea or produce double the CO2. But in the future, for 2050, it could be zero. So why the bold vision? Now, there are some push drivers in Oman for this. There is a reduction of government subsidy for electricity. There is a declining oil and gas production in Oman. There is a shift of an economic appraisal and economic evaluation of the gas reserves and some issues with the national energy policy planning, security of supply. There are some pull drivers as well. One of them is that solar PV is now cheaper than gas. The solar potential in Oman is actually world-class, and there are some unique wind resources in the Dhofar region from Salalah to Masira. So just a little bit of a personal journey. This is one of the world's first wind turbine that was erected in 1978. I went there myself. My father, an electrical engineer, he brought me. He believed this was crazy. He wanted nuclear power. History proved him wrong. So this was built by a number of idealistic hippies left from the 60s. It's still standing. And this was the foundation for the wind turbine company Vestas, there was an ingenious blacksmith. He said, I can do this myself and make a business out of it, and he's done it. So I'd like to just introduce the component breakdown of electricity. So there is a cost of capital, some plant lifespan, depreciation, staffing, depreciation, decommissioning, etc. So having some, the way the structure is in Oman with power purchase agreements for, say, this is your generation company, you have to deliver this amount of power. We agree this. We do it for 20 years. This is what it is. Then there is the efficiency. So how much electricity do we get per thermal energy? And that is about 40% in Oman as average, taking the numbers from 2016. And then there is the question about the cost of fuel, which we'll get back to. But the levelized cost of electricity, so the cost of generating each megawatt hour of electricity, usually would be in the $50 to $70 range per megawatt hour. When we have the renewable, there are some things that are a bit different. There is a cost of capital. It's even more important than for traditional power. And there are some things that are slightly changed. So the cost of fuel, it's free. Then there is the efficiency. I put 25 for wind. That's a very high number, but the wind, or for solar, that's a very high number, but the potential in Oman is very high. And 40% for wind is also what would be industry norm. So the levelized cost of electricity for renewable, it's falling, and it's been a dramatical travel. So for wind, the 7-year average decrease of cost has been 66%. And the span we are in is 32 to 62 of last year. And what is happening now is that on the utility scale, as of May this year, offshore North Sea in Germany, contracts were announced where a company is offering to bid 240 megawatt offshore projects, and they have accepted to take no subsidy. They will take market price. So this is by 2024. So there are a few things to take note of here. First is that it's wind power in windy locations is very competitive. The other is that it is planning 7 years ahead, where the bidders for this, they are taking into account the further cost reduction in this, and they have made the gamble that this will be profitable for us. We just take market price. We are not asking for any subsidy. For solar, it has been mentioned by the previous speakers that the cost of solar PV utility scale has come down dramatically. I'll just take a few of the numbers, how it's been. We have the latest one as of last year in Abu Dhabi, 24.2. And if you do the calculation with the efficiency in Oman for the power plants and see how much you pay, what's the cost of feedstock, what's the cost of the gas per megawatt hour, average, not peak, average is 26. So this means that solar, as of now, is cheaper than the cost of the gas. And that's just taking a $3 average price. Having a discussion about what is the cost of gas in the Middle East is, well, it's discussing elastic. Sometimes it's less, sometimes it's more, and there is a political element. But 3 is what's used here. And if it was 5, it was even a better business. Another interesting development is that in Oman there is now cost-reflective tariffs for customers of high consumption. the peak demand period is during the afternoon, and it's most pronounced in the month from May until July. And this means that the cost of electricity during that time is the highest. This means that there is the more incentive to produce additional electricity during that period of time is the biggest. So what has happened in California, where there's been a tremendous growth of solar PV for rooftops, is that the demand yearly, starting 2013, from the system side has been reduced. Has come down in 3 years by 1/3. So imagine what will happen in Oman when we have the cost-reflective tariff customers whom have a business case to say, I can reduce my electricity bill if I go on a pretty big solar PV solution on my own. I can produce for myself, I can reduce my bill, I can reduce the overhead that I would be paying to the distribution company. So there is a business case for customers on the CRT tariff. So most likely what will happen, this is the wind potential, average wind potential for the various locations has been measured in Oman. Most likely what will happen is that the current daily system peak demand time, which is in the afternoon, will shift to be in the early evening. So one of the things to probably plan for already now is to have the forward assessment that we should plan our renewable in the wind space to be peaking during the early hours of the evening rather than having PV or having wind taking care of our peak during the day. Another thing from where I come from is the change from central to decentralized power generation. You will see that this is what it was in 1990 and this is what it was in 2014. So the average importance of all these central power stations has diminished significantly. With this change that is likely also to happen in Oman, the investments in the transmission grid most likely would not be needed to go to reinforce and transmit power from centralized power stations to customers, but rather focusing on having investments in the IT, the data provision for customers to make smart choices. So the vision, your team, you're 32 years of age, I found out in average. Your generation's objective and achievement for the Sultanate could be to have 10 gigawatt of power and solar by 2050. That would be in time for retirement at the age of 65. That would be your achievement in Oman in post-oil. So taking this number, it's not completely taken out of the blue, yearly 2% increased energy demand, going from 30 terawatt hour to 57, 40% capacity factor for wind, 25% for solar PV. That comes to this visionary number. Another important thing is to have GCC interconnections, and we can have Dhofar to power Riyadh and UAE. Taking this map from the Arab League, where we have all the interconnections, probably there could be one for 6 gigawatt from Salalah area to Muscat, Duqm, Sur. Probably we could have a 3 gigawatt for the Riyadh. That's how it could be done. So there are many challenges associated with this. It's never been done before. It's impossible to control. There are answers to all of these. I'll not dive into the detail. We can do that during the sessions in the coming days. The important thing is that it has been done before. There are examples of Portugal UK, Germany, Denmark, running entirely on renewable energy, taking away the fossil component. So it can be done. We're here to help you with that. We are helping you already. We are assisting in solar rooftop program for the Ministry of Education. As of next year, 2 megawatt of solar will be installed at 22 schools around Oman. We have developed the AMR strategy for Oman, and we are currently leading, I'm myself doing that, the AMR rollout for the CRT customers in Oman. We've drafted the solar rooftop program for the regulator, and we have additional dozens of regional references. So those were my words. I'm happy to take any question, and of course looking forward to spend the coming week with the teams.
Hi, this is Han Lahsani, MDC. Moving to this renewable energy, we should, from many prospects, I mean the cooperation to invest in it as a customer, if I want to invest in it. What is the trend? Is it the trend and we have to go through it because everyone is going through it? يعني the vision to generate 10 megawatt of solar and wind power. Still, I didn't find a strong case and calculation that's why we have to go through this. We know that the gas and petrol, it's gonna vanish one day, but as a business case, are we ready to start with this? As an investor or a customer, we need a strong case to convince the people, to convince the businesses that we have to go through it. Not because it's just the trend and everyone is doing it, and my vision is to generate 10 or 100 megawatts. So if I'm a customer, a strong investor in the market, how you are going to convince me to go for this business? Other than it's a national contribution that we have to contribute to generating power through different sources than petrol. Thank you.
Thank you for asking. First of all, it's good business. So the bottom line is, it is a good business. So the solar PV utility scale is cheaper than having electricity produced at a power station. That is the case for Oman. So for Oman, with unique solar potential, the answer is that right now, the potential to save money, and I say every day you wait, you lose money, the potential to save money with solar, it's a no-brainer. So there are various solutions. The least cost solution to have solar generated is on a utility scale, where the PAW Nama Group would go and contract solar utility scale projects in the like we've seen both DEVA and Advea doing in Abu Dhabi and Dubai. That is the way forward now. There is the separate solar rooftop program which is in the preparation. The costs per megawatt are higher because you don't get the economics of scale. But if you're a customer and you have to pay in the peak hour about 67 paisa per kilowatt hour you consume, and you're additionally paying for the demand that you're imposing on in the peak time, you have a business case. I'll be happy to show tomorrow, but calculations show that if you are a big consumer, consuming more than 150,000 kilowatt hour a year, you could have a potential to invest where with the current pricing of electricity in Oman, you would have that paid back, economically paid back in 7 years. So there is an economic case for customers in Oman of particularly the CRT type, to invest in solar programs which would reduce the demand or the burden on the system, which is then reflecting that less investment is needed in the transmission side. One area to consider could be to say we have identified that we will have a strong demand in a particular area, and instead of adding yet another overhead line, another transmission, a power substation, maybe that peak could be met by installing a pre-agreed megawatt amount of PV to cater for the peak demand, which could turn out to be slightly cheaper or slightly more expensive. That's for an economic appraisal. But the business case is here. And eventually, solar and energy storage, we'll see what happens there. We got 33 years to fix this. Might be cheaper, so that would be a more viable business case. That is not as it is today. Battery for energy storage is more a benefit to regulate the 50 hertz you have in the system and maintaining that. So there is actually a business case for energy storage for quick discharge of energy to maintain the frequency. And that can then reduce some of the costs that are on a spinning reserve currently. So there are developments in this area, and we're doing some of that elsewhere, where it's obvious to start looking into this. But this is completely new thinking. It's radical transformation. And that is a challenge.
Thank you, Doctor. I think there's an online question also. Did you consider the integration of those systems, which consider probably the wind and solar, together to optimize the best green energy?
The numbers I present are coarse, so this has to be analyzed in more depth. The 50 megawatt wind is coming in Dhofar as the first. Probably we'll see an interconnection between Dhofar and the MIS, which will be beneficial. But this is an example of bold thinking, and maybe it's too bold, we'll see, but maybe that could be an objective for the coming days.
One question in the back and then come back. Please.
This is Engineer Hiba Al-Maimani. Talking from perspective of a providing company, we talked about it's a valid business case from a financial point of view. What about reliability point of view? As a provider, there's always the question, should I implement a renewable energy project or put a conventional system as we are doing now? Whether to invest in both so we guarantee that it's sustainable power. What about the regulator? There's doubt in this area. So maybe from your experience you can clarify.
Yeah, that would be a long reply, but we've done this elsewhere in the world, and it is done in many countries as well. So there is expertise where you can capitalize from that expertise. You don't have to have that uncertainty on your side. We can discuss that separately, but it is done, and it's working.
Question from Engineer Ali.
Yes, you mentioned that the CRT group would be interested, and we met the major CRT companies, and all of them indicated exactly that they're thinking about alternatives, and indeed both anywhere renewable, but more usually people directly go to solar. There are some limitations which we need to do before that is to go into really a positive trend. First, some of those companies are by the shore, and as you know, it's not effective to have that one. And also they have small areas, so they will not have enough space to cover much. So the whole idea has to have more strategical view, where maybe they're given in the desert, they're given in different places, so they can invest. And if it goes like this, then it will be fine. Also, number two is the linking of the north with the south. would be very needed in such projects. Especially now we having like the Masdar project, which is the wind, will give south Dhofar additional power. But we already have also another power station coming to us with 400 mega. So we and currently we even have over. So we'll have a lot of power, but we need to evacuate it somewhere. And so I think it's more. It has to be then looked at the more strategical thinking where we can utilize all this.
Yeah. I agree entirely. So take number 2. The peak is different in Dhofar and MIS, and there is typically an economic saving in having reduced investment in power generation each place. We have done appraisal of that power generation of an HVDC line between Saudi Arabia and Egypt. There is a positive business case, even though it's a very big investment. For the first point about the CRT, yes, there are customers that would not have space and they would have suboptimal location. The privatization drive as is would potentially allow for companies to have a solar PV farm located somewhere, and they would contract electricity with customers elsewhere, and there would need to be some arrangements with the transmission distribution company to transfer that electricity. So yes, I agree, that is a thing to be looked into.
I think we are running out of time, so even though there is a quick question here, it says why this is not going on in Oman?
Well, there has not been a burning platform before now. It's the same for all of the Middle East. There is energy politics as well in this, and the thing is that there is plenty of gas in the Middle East, but each country would like to control its own destiny, and Oman has been gifted with oil and gas and has used it, but there is also potential to harvest the sun and the wind now, which would allow Oman to be completely independent in energy, and that's a gift.
It's more of a comment rather than a question, really. And probably try to cover some of the questions in here. I mean, moving forward, Oman is going to that diversification strategy. And by the way, the solution is not only on the renewables, the solution also on a mix of strategies. I mean, for example, demand management. I mean, we know that certain companies won't be going for renewables or so, but there are other solutions like demand management and other places. We're looking in different energy sources as well. We're embarking on PV project as well. Hopefully before the end of this year, we'll be qualifying developers on that regard. And we've got a target also. I mean, it's quite an challenging and optimistic target as well. By 2025, probably we'll be seeing 10% of our energy produced through renewables in Oman. And it makes economical sense, it makes social and environmental sense as well.
Thank you, Engineer Yaqub. I think we have to end this session because we are late in schedule. Engineer Omar, if you like to...
نماء لرخاء يدوم.